So I use I use eyeliner, not eyeliner, but eyeshadow stuff for my eyebrows because I have a huge scar from where at age 4 I ran full speed into a TV. I have a scar on my left leg. I have a scar up here from where I fell as a 7th grader running a race. Like, falling has always been something quite natural.
Yes, I've managed to get to 65 years old and never having a broken bone or surgery yet.
I don't have a broken bone yet either. Welcome, Dan.
Such a good intro.
We are very, very excited to have our friend Dan here to talk with us about strengths and talk with us. You're our first guest ever on
I
Jen
lobbied
and
for
Millie.
this part too.
You did for a long
Well,
time.
I bothered them until I said, when are you going to put me on your show?
And it's perfect. It's perfect. We do.
We
owe
do.
you a
Pander for
lot.
airtime.
Dan, I owe you a lot. You have been a mentor to me in 1,000 different ways, as a trainer, as a strengths learner, but definitely on the area of well-being and wellness. So we did want to have Dan here, and I would like for you to introduce yourself to the people who don't yet know you, which probably are very few who are watching this. I would say most of the people who are watching this will be people that know you and know your talent. But introduce yourself, your strengths, and how you know a little bit about teammates.
Okay.
And what, yes, you maybe lobbied. That's funny. It's our honor to have you here with us.
Thank you.
And it's our honor to have you as our first guest. We don't script these, clearly. And we just roll with it. So there's very little direction. If you're a person who likes order, or things to be really great, you might want to lead with that forgiveness piece that you were talking.
I've seen your show before, so you know.
Okay. Well, Hannah
Some
makes
people
it look
think-
really
I
good.
call it a show.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a learning session. Right?
It's a learning session, and Hannah's really good at making us look good.
A lot better
Yes,
than
she
we
is.
probably are in reality. So
Yes,
the
yes.
curtain has now come down.
Yes.
Now you see Dan, everything on the inside.
So tell us a little bit about Dan.
Well, I will start out by saying that Teammates has been very good to me, and I reached out to teammates about almost 14 years ago. I was new to Omaha, coming back from Lincoln. We had moved here when I was working for Gallup, and Gallup moved to. And I don't know why at that stage in my life I was desiring to get some community involvement. So there's a high school, Bryan High School, right near where we live, and I thought I'm just going to go over there and volunteer my services, self-assurance and maximize your move, you know. And I kind of went and met the principal, and he, well, we just don't really, like, I think he was a little threatened by somebody just coming in and saying, I want to help. But somebody said at Gallup, I think it might have been Jerlene Mosley, there was a teammates thing going on, and I stuck my head in the door, and I met a guidance counselor from Bryan there, and I said, I live in the neighborhood. He says, we need mentors. And I thought, what a better way to start getting involved in the school. And I really hadn't thought about mentoring and teammates, didn't know much about teammates. So I started with a 7th grader at Bryan Middle School, and we went 6 years together. He graduated, then I had another mentee for 4 years, and now I'm at Pawnee Elementary in my 2nd year with a 4th grader. So along the way, I really came to appreciate and enjoy any contact I had with the Teammates organization. So I sent a letter to Suzanne Hans asking if I could be helpful to her anyway. And we had coffee, and I said, I don't know how I can help, but I'm interested in other involvements. And she connected me with some people. So then it just kind of took off from there. So some of the doors opened, and being able to speak to chapters and speak at leadership things, and served on the board for a while. And so it's been a really important part of this stage of my life. And I'm really glad I'm retired, I guess is the word you might say. And I just turned 65. So having those community connections with some purpose really is important when you get to that stage of life. It's important at any stage of life, but practically speaking, you don't always have the kind of time to really dig deep when you're managing your career and raising a family and all those things. So I've got time and interest on my hands here. It's what's easy to come here today.
Well, we're really lucky to have you.
I will say this just about me. My life's work was teaching, coaching, counseling, So I was a band director, public educator for 10 years. I spent 7 years in retail. While I was in retail, I get introduced to SRI Gallup and Don Clifton when I worked for Richmond Gordon. That brought me to Omaha. And I got to spend time in my mid to late 30s before I worked for Gallup, getting used to the idea of talent and excellence and expectations and positivity and all these things that the Gallup organization is about. Along the way, I got a master's degree in counseling, and I worked as an employee assistance program counselor and coach. So I started working in a lot of other people's workplaces. So workplaces and people were my business. Mankind was my business. Jacob Marley says that here. But I joined the Gallup organization in Lincoln in 1999 as a seminar leader, and then we were, at that time, StrengthsFinder was brand new. So I really was privileged to be able to work with StrengthsFinder almost from day one, it seemed like. Although it had been out about a year. The book hadn't been published yet, the first book. And Don Clifton's organization and the Cliftons and all the people that had worked so many years with him and were part of my influence. And so I worked for them for 12 years. And, so yeah, that's kind of who I am and what I'm about. So.
You want to share with the viewing audience what your top 5 are?
Yeah, maximizer, communication, woo, individualization, and self-assurance.
So one of the questions we like to ask is for, if you're to choose one today that you feel like today this is your superpower, and you can choose all 5 if you want to, but if there's one today in this moment that you would say you own and you use and you can claim it as a superpower, which one would that be?
Communication. I have absolutely no hesitation about coming here unscripted, without a plan, knowing we're gonna have a great hour here. And I thought, should I read some notes on wellness? Should I get my well-being? No. I have resisted that kind of preparation almost my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to people because I love just winging it. I love conversation. Give us a topic, let's spin it. And somebody said something at work the other day, and they said, "Oh, you're going to go talk to Dan. He's fun." You'll always learn something when you go talk to Dan.
I love that.
And when you hear those things said about you, you kind of go, "Whoa, yeah, well, that's kind of cool."
That's very cool,
Yeah.
and that's very true.
So-
Incredibly true. Yeah.
Every
So
time.
anyway, this is like, and I'll tell you a little short story. A Facebook friend of mine in Des Moines I went to high school with, she and her husband went to visit their financial planner last week, and when they went there was a TV camera crew set up there. They were doing some sort of a piece for the nightly news about couples and their financial planning. Would you like to be on the show? And they said no. They wouldn't do it.
Oh, really?
And so I wrote her a note saying, "Oh, are you kidding me?" I said, "I could have worked in some new material. Wouldn't have anything to do with financial planning, but like some new bits, right?
Right.
Like stuff I'm working on."
Yes.
And I realized she's the opposite of me. She is very one-on-one. She needs to be prepared. When you get to know her, and I'm a friend with her, she's very warm. She's fun to talk to. But ask her if she wants to be on interviewed by a TV station or have a camera on her. No. I thought, man, missed opportunity here.
Well, and we like to practice strength spotting during our Jen and Millie time together, which you are a gifted strength spotter. But just to see the communication paired with self-assurance. We don't do notes ever, so I'm really glad that you are okay with that. And I think part of the appeal of Jen and Millie, at least what we get in feedback, is that it's not scripted. And that if we can do it, anybody can do it. But also we try to talk about our strengths, spot strengths in one another and in life's moments, but also talk about generational differences, because the way that we see the world is very different, from the strengths lens, but also from the generational perspective. That's really how Jen and Millie got started. Tess's age, my age, there's just a little bit of a gap. And when we started thinking about the way we had dialogue, that's what's happening in the mentor-mentee relationship. And sometimes as mentors, we can be a little bit intimidated by that. How do I connect to this 7th grader? How do I, use the same language, when actually what we're finding is that we all learn together. So when a mentor just shows up and they are their unique self, they encourage their mentee to feel comfortable doing the same. So that's been the intention for Jen and Millie. Tess is a gifted strength spotter. When I thought about having the 2 of you in the room, and I actually did not anticipate being in the center, but having the 2 of them in the room, 2 of the most gifted strength spotters and strengths teachers that I know. And I bet there's just a little bit of difference between Tess's age and Dan's age. in the middle part of that, but to think about the way that you help people understand. When, we know this language, and a lot of the people who are watching know this language, but how can we help build this language for someone who's brand new to it? And how can we help get away from labels? My real name card, which is somewhere in my car probably, on the back of it has labels with a cross through it.
Yeah.
So that was one of the great things that I learned from Kurt Liesfeld about just staying away from those, and we try really hard when we talk about strengths to have you name them in your unique way, because I have communication, but self-assurance is, and so I do a little bit of panic sometimes, and I wonder what's this going to look like as a finished product, and Tess probably doesn't wonder as much about that.
That's
So what I'd like to do is we're just going to punt. That's what we do here. So I just strengths by the Dan. You want? I'm sure you want.
I want to
I
as
know
well,
you do.
yeah.
So let's do that, and then let's talk a little bit about, as we're gearing up to the holidays, what we can do for wellness and well-being.
I love it.
All right.
So I did want to strength spot Dan when he came in to the Omaha office here to this conversation with us. He came in with 2 mugs, which I think you see here. And so I love, and I'm going to actually ask you to explain maybe your mug a little bit, but I just wanted to strength spot his actually individualization. Because he has listened and watched, and I feel like gotten to know us well, even if it is through Jen and Millie. I know that you've known Allie for a lot longer than you've known me, and we've known each other, but even just the ability to say, this is what Jen and Millie's about, and I recall this episode, and I want to honor what you do here. So I would love to hear a little bit about your mugs. Since we had a whole episode, I think we talked predominantly about our mug selection. Why these 2 mugs, and is there a story behind them that you want to share?
Thank you. I remembered the mugs when I was thinking about just preparing for this today. Of course, I didn't do really formal preparation, but anticipating coming here, and I remember I was taken with that. I wanted to jump through and share my stories about mugs with your stories about mugs, because mugs are something that are really something I guess I collect, right? So, so I went to look for mugs today, and then there's the current rotation on the little thing next to the Keurig. And there's a mug from Ireland, which is a recent trip. There's a favorite Monet water murals, the water lilies from the L'Angeret exhibit outside the Louvre that have his different huge. And I love Monet, and I had a spiritual experience at Giverny, and when the first time I ever went there, which got into the whole thing of gardening. So those are on the current, and there's some of my wife's mugs. There's one that has my name, Papa, with all the grandkids on it. But I opened the cupboard because those were not what I wanted to bring for some reason. And I don't know what's in the cupboard. I was telling you that, and so I looked and I thought, well, gosh, I forgot all about this. I'll take this simply because it has my top 5. And I know we're going to talk about that, so at the very least, part of the name tag. But I pulled this one out. Now, I was lucky enough when I worked for Gallup to go overseas and do strength-based management training, great management program in the Netherlands 3 different times with a multi-European, so we weren't just Dutch, there were people from Wales and France and Mideast. But I bring back mugs of the places I travel, practically speaking, easy to fit in a suitcase. This one, it's Holland, so about there, but it has a tulip on it. And I absolutely love tulips. I would say tulips are my favorite flower. And I just got done planting in my garage 10 or 12 like 5-gallon pots full of tulips and daffodils that will sit in the garage all winter. And I'll put them out on the deck the 1st of March, and then in about a month they'll all bloom at once. So they're deck pots. And I put about 250 new tulips in my garden down below this year. And Roseanne Liesfeld, Kurt's wife, I know both Kurt and Roseanne from working at Gallup. Roseanne's a very avid gardener, and she was the one that told me when I was talking about tulips and when I'd gone to the Netherlands and connecting to her about what the Dutch said about tulips. She says, they're really annuals, you need to pull them every year. Kind of expensive, isn't it? He goes, yeah, but you'll get better tulips. I said, so you really go in your garden every year, and as soon as they're done blooming, you snap them off? I'm going to try that. Now you end up paying more money because tulips are not cheap. But so Roseanne taught me about how you do that every year, and then you just pull them off, put something else in their place, and then in the fall you dig them all up and you plant more tulips. And you always get the most robust, rich blooms then. The Dutch concurred when I was over there. I said, a friend of mine back in the States said that the tulip's really an annual, and he says, they absolutely are. You know, in fact, those tulip fields that you see in those pictures with acres and acres of tulips of just colors, massive colors,
Yes.
those blooms are on those plants for about a week. Tourists come in, they're all ooh and ah, and then they come with these commercial machines and they whack the flowers all off because the flower depletes the bulb. And these are commercially grown tulips, which are designed for resale, so the idea is to get them recharged as fast and as richly as possible, and that they need sun to do that, right? So, gosh, learn something new every day.
Yeah.
So I brought this, and I think, you know, part of my strength story is, if you'd have told me when I was starting my career as a high school music teacher in a town of community of, you know, 350 students and living in a town of 300 in north central Iowa, when all I ever wanted to be was a band director, someday I would be overseas, a real prestigious company, I think, it's fair to say.
Yes.
Doing a management education, strength-based management education for this multi, you know, European audience. Wow. Beyond my wildest dreams. So, as I sit here today, I have that stage of life where you look back and you go, what did I plan and how did it turn out? You know, really different than I thought it would.
Yes.
Wow.
And it's kind of cool, you know, it's kind of fun just to go, man, and I think I would hold that out for anybody in their career and thinking, especially for younger people thinking about that, is to be open to the possibilities that lie ahead.
Yes.
But you have to know what you're good at, and you have to know how you contribute best in order for that path, I think, to be as rich as you want it to be. We spend an awful lot of time early in our life sticking to some ideas or experimenting. We don't know who we are, and some of that's very natural, and we're not going to take that away from someone's development, because that's, I think, important that you grapple through. But we can certainly help people make better choices thinking about what do you do best. A woman that I work with in my part-time job, who at the front desk at the fitness center the other day, she's interviewing for a job. She has a degree in criminal justice and child welfare and this sort of thing. She's got a master's degree. But she's picking between two jobs. One is juvenile parole officer, and one is child welfare worker. She says, I really want the juvenile. I know that's where I belong. That's what I do best. That's where I fit. She was using all this language, and I just wanted to, you know, like, yes,
Yes.
Wow.
And I would say she's about 40.
And I think that's what Dan is speaking to is what you were speaking to when we talked with the kids at Hershey. So we were really lucky. Was that last week?
Last week.
Last week, we were in Hershey, population of about 600, and we were told that we were going to be talking, I hope you're watching, Kathy, we were going to be talking to the students, and then 2 days before, we found out that we were talking to the entire student body, 7 through 12.
Punt, right?
Yes, punt is the word. So we didn't really know what we were going to do or what we were going to say, and so as we're traveling to Hershey, we were kind of discussing, what do we want this to look like? What do we feel like would be helpful? And I love what Tess brought to the students. I'll let you share that, what you told the kids.
Sure. Well, I just talked, I guess, a little bit about my own journey with my career and strengths and understanding what I want to be when I grow up, really. And I feel like I'm at such just beginning stages of it anyway. And so for a lot of my life, I think because a lot of my strengths, I was told that I could study anything because I was bright. I had, a great future ahead of me. I had leadership talents. I had all of these adults and peers that would just kind of really encourage me and affirm, who I was. And so I was told that I could study anything and do anything I wanted to do. And my dad, from a very young age, with the best of intentions, told me that I was going to be how he was able to own a Jaguar, because I was going to make all this money, because I had all this talent, and so I had it ingrained at a young age. I'm sorry, Ron. But he, from a very great intention, because he wanted to encourage my studies, and I loved science, and AP Physics was my favorite class in high school. I loved digging into owl pellets and dissecting frogs, and it was one of my favorite things. And so I was like, well, I'm going to study biology because I love that, and I'm going to go on the pre-med track, and I'm going to, go and become, I really like working with people, so maybe I'll just be a pediatrician or a family, practitioner. And so I was on that path and came to Omaha and went to Creighton and then realized that I don't like chemistry. I really don't like chemistry. You have to have a good solid year of quality grades in chemistry to continue on before you even start biology classes. And I was so distraught and had such a hard year because everything that I had built my life around, which is every adult coming up and asking me what I want to be when I grow up, was built around I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a pediatrician, or I'm going to be a PT. And so to have that kind of taken away from me in a real sense of it was really, really difficult for me because I felt that my life is over, over dramatizing everything because what I had built up as what I would be good at and what I wanted to do was kind of was not life-giving for me. It wasn't engaging. I didn't enjoy doing the schoolwork. I could get a decent grade, but it wasn't keeping me engaged with it. And then I would become disconnected, and then I would get bad grades, not because I couldn't understand the material, but because I didn't want to study. And so I really kind of talked to these Hershey students and said, even, I asked how many knew what they wanted to do when they grow up, and almost all of them
Almost
did.
everybody.
Almost everyone had their hands up, and I didn't want to well, it's probably not going to happen, but
Sure.
not in that respect.
Yeah.
But I really came with the posture of I love that you were thinking ahead and you're having this idea of your future, but be open to exploring who you are and what your strengths tell you about yourself, because they're all going to be taking strengths this next coming school year. The whole school is, and be okay with being willing to change course a little bit and being willing to explore. And it was really when that happened that I found the perfect combination of my strengths and my passions. Not that I wasn't using my strengths when I was studying chemistry and biology, but it wasn't then aligned with my passions. And really when I found social science instead of hard science and started studying sociology and psychology and anthropology is really when I found that sweet spot of my strengths and my passions. And so I'm really just encouraging people that you might take a detour, you might not end up exactly where you want to end up, but that's okay. Part of the beauty is finding and discovering the sweet spot of your strengths and passions really in the midst of
Yeah,
of
it's
all
like
of
when
that.
you ask the question, what do you want to do when you grow up, and no one raises their hand, we go, good. You don't need to know right now what
Yeah.
you want to be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
What are you good at?
Yep.
What do you like
Yes,
doing?
those
Start
two
asking those
questions.
strength-based questions. What kinds of what do you like? What's most challenging to you? Where do you excel? When you're at your best, what are you doing? Let's take a different route to that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think there's still a tendency, even with StrengthsFinder, to link themes to specific roles.
Right.
Mhm.
And while you can make the case that some make good sense, there's much more complex than
Yeah.
that.
Right.
It's
There's-
finding what you do and what kind of a role. I'm a trainer, but I don't do technical training because that's not my deal.
Mhm.
And what kind of organization do I want to be in?
Yes, that's the part. How do you contribute
Who's
best?
my manager going to be?
Mhm.
Am I in a positive work environment?
Right.
Is the company growing?
Right. And so that really leads us to when I thought of what you said, what are you good at? How do you contribute best? And I thought of what Tess had shared with the students, which I think was very reassuring to the kids
Yeah.
to hear, okay, because there's a lot of pressure today to feel like you need to know where you're going. And I think at any season and stage of life, you can still be finding out what you're good at and finding out where you best contribute, which in my belief leads to a higher level of well-being.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue into chatting a little bit about well-being. One of the things that I would love for you to share with us are any well-being, overall well-being, wellness, even incorporating some of the humor pieces, tips,
Mhm.
tricks, resources, smart things to do between now and January 1, where we all have really, really good intentions about the year ahead.
So I'll start with two questions. These are Gallup questions, so I'm giving them the credit. These are not my inventions. The questions are, I'm trying to think exactly how they're worded. Would you like to have more days like yesterday? It's one of the questions. What is the other one? How would you rate your life overall? And would you like to have more? How did you do yesterday? Would you like to have more days like yesterday? Daniel Kahneman, who talks about behavioral economics and won a Nobel Prize and all this, he talks about the experiencing self and the remembering self. So when I rate my life overall, I'm really tapping into the remembering part of my brain. I'm making a subjective evaluation, which is biased towards what I put most weight on of how did my life turn out for me. But when you ask how did you do yesterday, you really start to tap into the experiencing self. How much positive emotion did you feel? What was the ratio of good to bad experiences? Did I have enough social contact? Was I afraid or not afraid? Did I experience any pain? Physical pain, emotional pain. And there's a whole bunch of items you can dig in, that, because one of the ways to create a life that you look back on and say, I would rate my life very all, is to string together moment after moment after moment. We call those days. But in a day, there's 20,000 moments, and we tend to archive the strongest moments, most positive, most negative. So, but did I have a good day yesterday? And how do I have an equally good day today, even though it might be a different day? And so when we get into this whole idea of strengths, one of the reasons strengths and well-being are so, and that may be the most powerful of 5 or 6 major broad elements that kind of capture well-being, is that the strengths has a lot to do with, again, what we do occupationally, which is where we spend a lot of time, but also how we relate to others and what we bring for value, all comes through our strengths here. And having that, I think, confidence that and clarity about what it is you are, what you do best, that these are gifts you were given, which creates some other kind of emotional tethers, but they actually become governors. They tell you where you say yes and where you say no, where you jump in, where you don't jump in. And I think that starts to create, and we have to think about this, I think, in terms of modern time, because we can't go back 500 years ago. Did they have high well-being? Well, not really, depending where you lived.
Right.
I learned in Ireland, they didn't have really high well-being for a long time. We live in a really modern world where the possibility of having really high being is available to many of us, not all of us.
Right.
But that is not something that's an automatic just because we live in modern times. It still has to be crafted, it still has to be acquired, and that's where mentors and teachers and some good fortune also comes into play. But luck is not enough. Luck is not enough. It's not a random thing. It's a more intentional thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we start with strengths, and that's a sense of self-identification of who am I, and it's a core, visceral piece of who we are as a human being. And to look at your life and look back and be able to say, I would rate my life well. I think one has to be able to embrace their natural gifts, to believe that talents are gifts, that they have some, and that they are sufficient to create a life worth living.
Mm-hmm.
The ones I have, not the ones I don't have.
Right.
I got enough. What do I do with it? How do I do with it? And that's a belief that I have, and I know when I came to this belief, I believe every human being has enough talent. I'll give some credit to Don Clifton. The first time I met him, in like 1985, he walked into a room and he said, everybody has talent. Everybody can do one thing better than 10,000 other people. Do you believe it? Bang. Everybody has talent. Everybody can do one thing better than 10,000 people on the earth. Do you believe it? And he had a saying, that Gallup had a saying called a belief in talent. Great managers have a belief in talent. What's it mean to believe in talent? Well, the talent actually exists. Physically and emotionally and spiritually, it exists in human beings, not like the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus that are made up. It really is a real thing, even though it's hard to identify. Do I believe in your talent? Do I believe in my talent? When you're working with a parent, when you're working with a friend, and you have an accident, you stop and say to yourself, what was right about that person? How might her talents even been driving her to do something, accomplish something, that in this case just came with a little consequence?
Mm-hmm.
I still want to believe in her talent. If I believe in my talent first, and I believe in your talent, then how I approach you may be very different than if I don't understand my own talent, and I don't really respect your talent.
Which is so what strength-based mentoring is. That's exactly what strength-based mentoring is. And so one of the things that Des Moines said this last week, we had a training session for our new coordinators, and he was talking about scholarships and he was talking about post-secondary opportunities. But it starts with, if a mentor has to believe, you have to believe in that pathway for that young person. Because if you don't, and if you come in and say, well, there's no way my mentee is going to be able to do this, or that you don't have that innate belief in your own self, in your own talent, that you can't.
Yeah.
You can't believe in someone else's. And then what a gift it is when you believe in someone else. And you can see that your belief in them lifts them to a better place.
Yeah, and that's really subtle. Sometimes, your presence may be the only thing that's communicating that right now. It may not be
Yes.
something you actually say. It's just,
Right.
it's just how you sit with them in a room.
Right.
That they kind of pick up that you believe in me, and it's a
Yes.
positive point of view, and There's the lack of judgment or less than going on right
Yes.
there. So I start off by thinking about, how do I string together really good days? And so there are some practical elements of having a good day. It's really helpful to be in a place where it's positive. Don Clifton used to talk about growth a lot. That that have a good profit and growth, and that created a positive work organizations, and he was very transparent as a business leader, way ahead of his time, with helping people understand the financials and what the goals were, so people could get behind that and they could see the success, because we tend to be more positive when we know those things and we're involved than we don't. And sometimes when you're starting your career and you're trying to figure all that out, that's just a matter of sometimes luck, that you land in a place that's growing. If you've ever worked someplace that was going out of business or wasn't growing, that was downsizing, or it gets negative in a hurry, and it's hard to stay positive, and then you go to work there, and even though you know yourself and you're around a good team, there's this ratio of negative, events and communications and messages to positive, and you feel like you're getting out of whack there. One of the things I like best about my little positive part-time job I have is that it's a pretty positive place. And it happens to be a place where people are going there to get better, get healthier, get stronger, to get more fit. It's very social. So I like working there, not because the work is hard, but because it's a positive place.
Yes.
It just feels right. And I lucked into that because I didn't know that much about it. I mean, a little bit, but that it was just happened to be a pretty positive place. If it was negative, I wouldn't be there for a minute at this stage of my life. It'd just be gone. I can't afford that negativity. So then when you talk about positive moments, and think about your work, are you on a team where you're known for your strengths? Are you in the right role? Do you have a good manager? Do you have enough evidence or feedback that you're making a difference? You're seeing some headway, you're accomplishing something. And so that's really important that people see progress, because that creates a better day. You get into the social part of the world. Do you have enough social time in your world? Now, introverts and extroverts are different in terms of what they need, in terms of if we actually quantify kind of the frequency of interactions and the depth of those, but people need people. And so you only need a couple really good friends, and so are you socially connected? And sometimes work becomes both a social feeder as well as, but other, is there an absence of pain and suffering? We talk about finances. That's a well-being issue. If you don't have enough money to pay your bills. I can remember being a first-year teacher and running out of money a week before payday. We got paid once a month, and I ran out of money. It didn't really affect my well-being all that much, because I knew I was going to get paid in a week. And I had a contract for a year and a college degree that gave me a license to teach. So I had some hope about, and I was willing to kind of not have much. It was kind of funny, actually. I ran out of money and I'm a teacher. I had to go to the piggy bank, and we'd go to the grocery store in the next biggest town, and we'd write a check for cash, hoping it didn't clear by the time our paycheck got deposited. But that was also a vision for a life that I wasn't supposed to have a lot of money at that time. I'd chosen this life, and it wasn't about money. And I knew I wasn't going to make a lot of money, right? But if you are a mom with 2 kids, and you're supporting them, and you're working 2 part-time jobs, and the battery in the car, quits, or you get a flat tire, and your credit's maxed out, and you can't get to work because you can't get the tire fixed, and it's cold, that's going to be a bad day.
Yes.
That's going to be a bad day. It's going to be a hard day. And so that's where finances and some of those things, do you have enough? Physically, we talk about physical well-being. Do you have enough energy to do the things you want to do? That changes in our lifetime. That does change in our lifetime. We evolve into a less, not active, but we understand our limits and things. So it isn't about necessarily being as strong or as fast or having the same kind of endurance or the ability to work 12-hour days when you were 20 and 30 years old, like Scott Frost is going to do, right? 42. But it's about having enough energy to do the things you want to do. So that does involve self-care, right?
Yes.
And getting enough sleep and having the right kind of diet and staying active and then moving through that. And then I think the other one is really community. Do you have a sense of, and I think your sense of community goes with you, so you don't necessarily need to have a good day. I'm kind of getting a double whammy today because I had a mentoring session before I came here, and now I'm teammates. So this is one of my big community buckets, and I'll go home tonight with high well-being, higher than average, because I got to really spend a little time investing directly in. But teammates is with me when I'm not here. You know, I see a couple mentors at work. I saw Karen yesterday. How's your match going? Oh, she's moving to a different school. Well, where's she going? She's staying in Ralston? No, she's going to Millard. Millard's got a great chapter. Call the coordinator. You know, follow her. Don't let her get away from you. You know, so when you think about yesterday, how would you rate yesterday on a scale from 1 to 10? A really great day. You know, then when you start to mark those really good days, you want to really look at those good days and build your own kind of ratio and sort of index of what it is that makes my day a really good day. That's not going to be the same for everybody else. You know, there's different ratios around the different areas of well-being. And then how do I build a life intentionally where I just have more of those good days? And then we end up rating our life pretty well overall, you know, when we get to the end here.
So I am thinking one of the things we'll follow up with is we'll have your well-being handout that you provide when we do the well-being training, our academy session. So I'll include that for sure. We did talk about self-care in one of our previous episodes, but maybe we could do another little piece on that coming up. And then I was thinking of a quote that Kristen sent me, and I won't be able to name it exactly, but it's about creating a life that you love. So I'll make sure that I send that out with the follow-up pieces. We could talk to you all day.
You know, one of the challenges developmentally, so this gets a little bit to some generational things, and I think there's generational things, and I think there's lifespan, and so I want to integrate those two, because I think lifespan is more about stages of life rather than what generation you're born in. And I think we have to consider that, because I think when I look back, and people were talking about, you know, Scott Frost being hired and the challenge ahead of him, and is he worried about failure? And I said, of course he's not worried about failure. First of all, he's a very confident young man, right? Or middle-aged man, you know. But I said, when you're at that stage of your career, you don't stop and spend a whole lot of time thinking about failure. You know, you think about what's in it for me to, you know, what's in it with the drive. You have that capacity, and you know, you have it at that stage of your life, different than you're going to have it at a different stage of your life. Now, there are exceptional people who never slow down and never, you know. But so I think when you go back and you think about your 20s and developing in your 20s and what you were willing to do to get an opportunity and max it out, the amount of effort, the amount of investment, the amount of risk you're going to take changes for most people as they age, right? So it's always unfair. I'm very aware when I'm talking with someone in their 20s about their career advice and those things, not to impose what I think I need for sleep or what a balanced life looks like. I was asked to contribute to a Lincoln Journal Star article about 15 years ago, maybe more than that. No, it's probably 20 years ago. And about generations in the workplace and this sort of thing. I said, you need to quote me exactly or I'm never going to contribute one of your articles again. I was working for the EAP down in Lincoln, and they used us a lot as sort of a health and wellness resource. I said, I want to say this. I believe that today's generation, I don't know what we were calling it then, what Z, Y, or M, or
Probably been the X.
prime root of 3 generation, you know,
Yep.
is as talented as any other generation that's come before. So keep that in mind. They're as equally as talented as the last generation we labeled, the one before that. What's changed is the way they view the world and the way they view work organizations. And that's changing very quickly because work organizations and technology and the marketplace and the world is changing very quickly. So they are not going to see the world the way we did. Therefore, they are not necessarily going to want to jump to the same hoops we did to get ahead. And the value of the job and what development looks like is going to be different, you know. So we can either push against that and say, well, that's wrong, or we can say, how do we meet them halfway on this at least?
Mm-hmm.
But talent is there. So we don't want to lose the right talent because we're not willing to adapt to their way of seeing the world. They don't have to like it, you have to accept it. There's a difference.
We talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
We do. I think one of the things that we spoke about on the way to Hershey was I had read an article via Twitter about a guy my age. I'm actually the same exact age as Scott Frost. A little bit different life accomplishments there, Scott. You're on the fast track. I'm falling downstairs. So when I read it, it was about this guy who was a Gen Xer like me who had hired a millennial to help him see the world differently. and to really motivate him in a lot of different ways. And one of the things that he quoted, that he said in the article, was about how his presentations became stale because he was using the same stories over and over. And I'm reading it like, oh no, because I know that Tess could tell all my stories. But for me, and I'm going to strength spot myself, my empathy senses when people, and it's empathy woo combination, when people connect to my stories and that motivates them here, I'm telling that story again and again and again. I don't care how many times you hear it, it works. Now, if it's the same audience, probably better have a different story. But usually it's primarily new hearing that, except for poor Tess, who's heard it 900 times. And I have yet to see her eye roll. She is picking up on facial expression. When we're running out of time, she'll do this at me. But otherwise, I thought to myself, that's so important for me to think about. And we work together very well as a team, I think, because we learn together. We just bring our learning together. We love to discuss what happens after a training. We have to have like think tank time, which is great if we're traveling together, but also when we're thinking about what's next. And so I think the tidbits that you've given us today have been super helpful when we're thinking about what's next.
So what's clear that I observed between the two is you have a mutual, at the baseline, a mutual respect for each other.
Yes.
From there, it's beyond that. It builds up. But I think when I think about working, because I work with a lot of young people, way younger than me, where I work, and I think, how do I show respect to them? Well, I listen to them. And one of my younger coworkers said, "You listen." She told me I listened one day. I said, "Really? Say more about that." You just listen. You act like you care about what I have to say. So I think there are relational elements that transcend the other things that generations collide over. Whether I want to text you when I'm quitting my job, or versus come and talk to you in person. Those are things we stumble over sometimes. But when I do have a chance to interact with you, I think these are things that haven't changed in terms of human relationships and are really, they're really hungry for. And I was really taken with what John Cook said when he spoke at Leadership 2 years ago about coaching the generation he has who are elite athletes. We're huge volleyball fans, so I've watched all those girls come through the program and just admired them as people. But that they don't know how to talk to each other, they don't eat right, and I think, okay, so we're going to struggle with that because I'm analog, I'm live. Right? I text my wife, but I would prefer to walk into somebody's office, I'm a dialoguer, I'm a talker. Not everybody is.
Right.
And so, but how do I show respect for you? And if I can show respect for you, that I know, that I see you, I know you, and I know something about you, and I acknowledge you in your presence, we got a chance.
Right.
We have a good chance. I think what happens with people of my generation is they are dismissive of those. You hear this all the time. I don't understand. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. They may mean it playfully, but they tend to dip in their buckets a little bit. Just like we talk negative about our strengths sometimes. It's easy to say, all those millennials, they all want to do this, and they're all on their phones. And we get these broad brushes, and even in our humor, and if you're the person they're talking about, do you really want to hear that?
Right.
Especially if you're the exception to that.
We did a show on
like
that.
avocado toast.
Right.
And
Yeah.
maybe want to buy a house one day.
If you think about generations, and you think about what strength-based a life is about, it's really focusing on what's right with the person. What's right with each of these generations? What's their advantage? What do they bring to the world? What do they bring different in terms of, one of the things I really admire about people younger than me is they don't think they have to wait for stuff that long. They're ready to go. Well, that's energy to be harnessed, right? So this whole idea of earning your stripes and kind of paying your dues, and by God, I had to kind of work my way up the ladder, But there's this possibility thinking that's willing. So I have two, a daughter and a son-in-law in Kansas City that are running their own businesses now. She's 42 and he's 38. They don't want to work for anybody else. They've started 2 businesses in the last year. A popcorn store and an online boutique.
Awesome.
Yeah, and they're going gangbusters.
We'd
Now,
like to know about the
Boutique.
place.
yeah, it's really great. I don't want to own their lifestyle because it's a little chaotic and they don't get much sleep. But I admire them for the willingness, because that's the way they view the world. They They view the organizations differently. They don't want to sell their soul to a company, you know,
Right.
right? I was willing to sell some of mine to a company. I didn't think that was such a bad thing, you know?
Well, it was, for sure,
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So thank you for being
Oh, you're
you
welcome.
here today.
Where'd our time go?
And for,
Can we do part 2 then? We get to hear more from Tess.
All right,
We
let's go
should.
lobbying. This is good.
We are very, very grateful for Dan's willingness to be here. Tess and I love to have our conversations about strengths. We love to include you as viewers. We love your feedback. And I, again, want to say thank you to those of you who have been willing to write a blog piece. What we're getting is that you're learning more about that strength when you write about it, but from our perspective, we're learning more about that strength when you write about it. So please continue to share with us if you're willing for the blog. And we have not had a lot of people who have said, yay, I want to come on Jen and Millie. So if any of you out there would be
The only
interested
one is here.
in being a guest, we would love to have you as well. So will we be here before Christmas?
We'll try one. Why don't we try sneaking
A
one?
holiday Jen and Millie?
Holiday Jen and Millie.
Okay.
We'll wear crazy sweaters or something.
Got one.
What's your favorite Christmas memory? That's also good.
We could do
Yeah,
that
that'd be
too.
good.
So thanks for being with us.
And if you're especially love our blog, just want to give a plug. Dan will be writing about the strength of woo. It won't be until May, but be looking ahead at all the awesome people that you're going to get to know about and meet through Jen and Millie, but also through their stories that they share on the blog. So thanks for being with us.